Shoulder feels great. Did you go to the appointments? Mum set something up. I don't know, I'm fine, Hayden. Did you actually go? He paused. Brooke, it's covered. Don't worry about it. The trainer cleared me last week. The trainer hadn't cleared him. There was no trainer. He was 19 and lying badly to his older sister at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Tuesday. And I knew it, and I let it go. I put the discharge sheet in the bottom drawer of my desk at the apartment in Nashville. I put the index card on top of it. I told myself he was an adult. It wasn't my body. I told myself the same thing for 2.5 years. I want to be honest about that. I let it go because letting things go was the only way I've survived being in this family. If I had asked my mother, she would have spun something. She would have said Hayden was doing PT with a friend who was a trainer. She would have said he was doing it himself. She would have said it was none of my business. Then she would have called my father and told him I was being controlling. And my father would have answered because my father had already left. I didn't know yet why my father had left. I would find out in March of 2026. I want to tell you about Owen because the story doesn't make sense without him. In October of 2024, his office called me about a billing question. Hayden had a credit balance from the surgery. They needed a forwarding address. Owen, for some reason, called me instead of letting admin handle it. We talked for 40 minutes. At the end of the call, he said, I told myself I'd ask if I ever saw you again. I didn't expect the billing question to be the reason. We met for coffee a week later. I didn't tell my mother. We started dating in November. I didn't tell my mother. He met my father at a barbecue in Knoxville in February of 2025. My father shook his hand for a long time and said, Good. I didn't tell my mother any of that either. I want to tell you something about that barbecue because it mattered. My father had not asked me beforehand what Owen did for a living. He had asked me only one question on the phone 3 days before we drove up. He asked, Does he listen? I said, Yes. He said, Okay, bring him. That was the whole interview. When we got there, my father was in the backyard turning chicken on a small charcoal grill. Owen walked over and stood next to him without asking. He stood there for almost a full minute. Then he said, I haven't had real charcoal in a long time. My father said, City life. Owen said, Mostly. They didn't talk for a while after that. They just stood there. 2 men, 1 grill, no performance. Later, after we ate, my father walked Owen into the truck. They were there for maybe 10 minutes. I watched through the kitchen window. They weren't talking the whole time. They were learning about the tailgate. At one point, my father pointed at something in the yard. Owen nodded. When Owen came back inside, he didn't tell me what they talked about. It wasn't until much later, after the folder, after Knoxville, after everything that my father told me. He said I asked him if he knew what he was getting into. Not with you, with her. He said he had a folder too. He'd known Owen had known. He'd been carrying the same thing my father had been carrying, and neither of them had told me because both of them had been waiting for me to come to my own conclusion. In December of 2025, on a Saturday morning, in the kitchen of the apartment we shared, Owen asked me to marry him. He didn't get on one knee. He didn't film it for social media. He just said, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you, if you like that too. I said yes, he said. What kind of wedding do you want? I said small March. No big season, no drama, just us and the people who showed up the whole time. He said okay. We sent 50 save the dates in January. I sent one to my mother. She opened it. She put it on her refrigerator under a magnet shaped like a baseball bat. She did not call. She did not text. 3 weeks later, when I called her to mention an event on March 14, she said, yeah. She sent me the address closer to the date. I didn't send her the address. I didn't lie to her. I just didn't correct her. There's a big difference between hiding something and refusing to hand someone a weapon. If you've ever known that difference, you know exactly what I mean. On the morning of March 14, 2026, I woke up at 6:13 a.m. in an Airbnb 4 miles from the chapel. I made coffee. I stood by the window. No one needed me. For the first time in a long time, my Saturday was mine. My phone buzzed at 6:40. My father on the road 2 hours out, wearing the tie. The tie was his father's navy with a thin gold strip. He'd worn it once before at my college graduation when my mother had stayed home with Hayden because Hayden had a tournament. My father arrived at 9:30 with 3 flowers from his yard in Knoxville, 2 magnolias and 1 single lily. He held them out to me with both hands, the way you hold something you've been carrying carefully for a long time. Your mother had a magnolia tree once, he said. When you were little, she didn't like you touching it. I figured you should have something from yours. I took the flower. I didn't cry. I didn't really know why I didn't cry. He handed me a small envelope, white, no writing on it. Open this later, he said. Not now, later. I put it in my purse. I went upstairs to get ready. I stood in front of a small mirror in the bridal suite and breathed out once. Some brides cry, Margot said. Some brides exhale. I exhaled. When she opened the hallway door, my father was standing there polishing his shoes with a handkerchief. If you've ever sat in a room your family forgot to enter, you know what kind of silence I'm describing. There are more stories like this one, and they all end the same way with the woman choosing herself, so subscribe to Crime Flux now. The ceremony started at 2 p.m. 50 people, the front row on the bride's side, had one filled chair and one empty chair. The empty one had no card on it. I had asked Margot to remove the card. The chair stayed. My father walked me down the aisle. Halfway down, he leaned towards my ear and said, I'm proud of you. I should have said it more. I have never heard those words from him in that order. Owen was waiting at the altar. He was smiling the way he smiled in surgical consults, like someone who already knew the outcome and trusted the work. The vows were short. I read 4 sentences. Owen read 5. The 5th sentence of his was the one I held on to. You taught me that love isn't proven by those who show up the loudest. It's proven by those who show up at all. We signed the marriage license. My father was a witness. He pressed the pen into the paper hard, like he wanted to make sure it stayed. At the reception at 5:30, Owen stood up to give a toast. He held his glass low. He spoke quietly, the way he speaks when he's about to say something he's planned. My wife shows up for everyone, he said. Her parents, her family, my patients, strangers, especially my patients. There's a young man in the state who had been working shoulder. Because Brooke wrote his recovery plan on an index card 3 years ago in my consult room. She didn't have to. She did anyway. That's who she is. A few people laughed gently, a few people clapped. My cousin Megan, who'd flown in from Atlanta, took out her phone and recorded the last 15 seconds of the toast. She posted it to Instagram story at 11:42 p.m. that night. My father stood up after Owen sat down. He didn't tap his glass. He didn't clear his throat. He just stood and the room got quiet. He said, I'm not going to give a speech. I want to say one thing, Brooke. You waited a long time to be seen. You should not have waited this long. I'm sorry it took me this long to say it out loud, and I'm grateful to be here to say it now. He sat down. He drank his glass of water. He did not look at me because he knew if he did, he would not be able to keep his face still. I checked my phone for the first time at 11:30. When I did, there was no calls from my mother. I put the phone face down on the table, and I went back to dancing with my husband. At 11:47, Owen handed me his phone. He had been scrolling. He didn't say anything. He just turned the screen towards me. It was Megan's Instagram story and a short clip of Owen's toast. The caption, my cousin Brooke married a good one today. Dr. Owen Cladwell. You better take care of her. Hashtag Cladwell wedding. March 14, 2026. I looked at it for maybe 4 seconds. I said she just figured out the name. Owen said, are you okay? I said, I think I finally am. My phone rang at 11:51. Mother. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. The vibration kept going. It stopped. When it stopped again at 11:53, then 11:55, then 11:58, a text came through at 12:04 a.m. Brooke, pick up. At 12:08, my brother called. First time in 6 months. He left a voicemail. I listened to it later. His voice was slurred. Brooke, hey, listen, Mom is freaking out. She said, like, your husband is my doctor. Did you marry my doctor? That's like weird. Call her back, okay? She's losing it. She was losing it. I understood why before he did. The calls kept coming. 1:24 voicemail, 2 seconds long, just breathing. 12:30 voicemail, 11 seconds. Brooke, pick up please. 12:47 voicemail, 20 seconds. I just need to know one thing. Is he still seeing patients from 2023? Please, 102 no voicemail, just a call. 118 text. I'm sorry I missed your event. I am. Please call me. She has still not used the word wedding. 1:34 a.m. A new text. Brooke, this is urgent. This is about Hayden, please. 1:47 a.m. voicemail, 46 seconds. This one I played twice. I want you to hear this. Brooke, please. I need to know if Owen had looked at anything from Hayden's recovery records. Anything from 2023. Anything at all. Just tell me. I can explain everything. I never meant for any of this to look the way it looks. Please. 1:58 a.m. The last call. I read the text. I didn't answer any of them. Owen sat down next to me on the edge of the bed. The lights were off in the rest of the suite. I had my wedding dress draped over the chair by the closet. The bouquet was on the dresser and a lily. I said, she's not calling because she missed it. He said, what? Then why? I said, she's calling because she's scared of what you know. He said, what do I know? I said, I'm going to find out on Monday. If you've ever realised your mother was scared of you instead of for you, there's a name for that moment. Stay with me. The story changes from here. I turned my phone back on Monday morning. March 16, 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 23 texts. I sat at the kitchen island with my coffee and listened to all 12 voicemails in order. I put them on speaker. Owen was at the hospital. The apartment was quiet, except for her voice. The first one, 11:53 p.m, was calm. Honey, call me when you can. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We need to talk about Hayden. She had led with Hayden on the night of my wedding, in her first sentence. The second one was sharper. Brooke, this is your mother. Pick up the phone. We need to discuss something time sensitive. The fourth one started to crack. Brooke, please, I just need to know one thing. Does Owen still have access to Hayden's records? Just answer me. That's the seventh one after that. I'm not going to keep apologizing. I told you senior weekend was important. You knew that, but honey, please, I need to know what your husband has looked at. I need to know. The ninth one, 1:47 a.m, was different. She wasn't yelling anymore. She was breathing too fast. Brooke, please, I need to know if Owen had looked at anything from Hayden's recovery records.